Hey, welcome to church. Thanks for joining us today. We're so glad that you're joining us each week. And hey, if this is your first time, a very special welcome to you. Stick around, God has something special for you today. If this is your first time, would you scan the QR code, head to our website. You can fill out the Connect card. This helps us know a little bit more about who you are and how we can be praying for you. Go ahead and do that now. Here at One Church, we want to reach the most people in the shortest time, and our YouTube channel is helping us to do that. Welcome to all of our new subscribers. Thanks so much for being part of it. And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you like and subscribe and turn that notifications bell on to stay caught up with everything we have going on here at One Church. We continue to pray for one person to share God's love with every day. A great way to share God's love with someone right now is to invite them to service. Take a second and share the service link with somebody that God puts on your heart. Scripture reminds us that it is more blessed to give than to receive. You know, God blessed us by giving his son, Jesus. First, we give God our lives, and then we give out of our lives. Thank you so much for your continued generosity. Your giving changes lives. If you'd like to give at any time during our service, here are a few ways that you can do that. There's moments in my life where I forget to be grateful for all that God's done. You know, Jesus asked us to remember what he did. And we remember what Jesus did for us, his life, his death, his burial, and his resurrection. And we do that in the time of communion. So gather what you'll need and let's be ready to share in that together. We're in our message series called Hi, My Name Is. And in this message series, we're going to unpack all the ways that God revealed himself through I am statements. Our memory verse is found in Exodus 3, verse 14. And it says this, "And God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." Before we hear the message, I want to invite you to join us. We're going to sing songs. We're going to lift our voice. We're going to open our hearts. We're going to give all of our worship to the King. Come on, let's go.
You're the lamp and you guide our feet, yeah. generations falling down in worship to sing the song of ages to the Lamb. And all who've gone before us and all who will believe will sing the song of ages to the Lamb. Your name is the highest, your name is the greatest, your name stands above them all, above all thrones and dominions and all powers and positions. Your name, it stands above them all, and the angels cry, holy, all creation cries, holy, you are lifted high, holy,
powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. Nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus.
Hey, let me invite you to take a next step with Jesus today. Today is the day of salvation. Scan the QR code, head to the website. The Connect card will help you do that. You can join a group, you can volunteer, you can sign up to be baptized. Take a next step with Jesus today. God is doing great things here at One Church, and He's doing great things all over the world. But here at One Church, we love to celebrate 5 awesome things that are going on in the life of our church. We do that in our High Five. Check it out now.
Up at number 5, this past weekend, students from our Rutland, Vermont outpost took a road trip to New Hampshire, where they had a blast exploring beaches, drinking milkshakes, and visiting some of our New Hampshire outposts too. High five, you guys, to more fun times like these. Up at number 4, One Church is back at it, sharing God's love with kids that are getting ready for another school year. Our outposts have been collecting school supplies through the month of August, and this week, those school supplies are getting delivered. High five, One Church, to sharing God's love with your communities. Here at number 3, many people from One Church took to the golf course last week to support our local outreach partner, Do You Know Him Ministries, in their annual golf tournament. This fundraiser aims to help our under-resourced friends in the area access clothes, food, and the good news of Jesus. High five to everyone who participated for sharing God's love like this. In at number 2, this past week, members of our Franklin outpost served some under-resourced friends in their area by cooking and serving up food at their local soup kitchen. Way to go, Franklin, and high five to more times like this. And finally, up at number 1, we're celebrating 3 baptisms from our Manchester outpost this past week. High five to Seth, Junior, and Carly. We're so excited for how God will continue to work in and through you. Thanks for joining us for our High Five, and I can't wait to celebrate with you in the next one.
There's a myth going on out there that says that teenagers have it tougher today than ever before. You guys ever heard this one? Teenagers, it's a crazy world out there. Teenagers have it harder today. And I think there's a whole lot of ways that we could, contradict that particular argument, but I think I really only need one. You see, recently, my 18-year-old son, Ace, he came up to me and he said, "Yo, Bo Chancey," because that's what he always starts every conversation with me with, "Yo, Bo Chancey." And I said, "What up, dude?" And he says, "Yo, Bo Chancey, I just beat my video game." I said, "Okay." He goes, "No, you don't understand. Like, this is a big deal. I beat the game." I said, "Yeah, okay. How long did it take you?" He said, "I beat the game in 3 days." I'm like, "Yeah, but over those 3 days, how often were you playing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm a couple hours a day, but I beat the game." And I was like, "Well, how many times did you die?" He's like, "I don't know. It doesn't matter." I'm like, "What do you mean it doesn't matter?" He said, "Well, it doesn't matter how many times you die." And this particular, the world's gone soft, is what I'm saying here. Because I had video games. I'm not that old. I had video games. But when I had video games, when I was a teenager, you didn't have unlimited lives. You lived in this stress, this tension, this pressure-filled environment that one misstep and you were closer to the game ending. But now it's unlimited lives. These guys are just willy-nilly out there beating video games. They don't even got to put quarters in them anymore. What are we doing out here? And here's what I would say to you. When you have unlimited lives and death no longer matters, I think you play the game a little more free. What do you think about that? You think that's true? When you have unlimited lives and death no longer matters, you might play the game a little bit more free. You might enjoy it a little bit more too. And as I was thinking about that, it brings us to the story of Jesus and what he has done for us. We're in this message series right now called Hi, My Name Is. Our God is in the revealing business. He longs to make himself known because he is for us and he wants us to know us. And that's why Jesus came to earth. God in flesh, the Son of God, came to earth so that God could show himself to us and make a wonderful way for us to be with him. And in the Gospel of John in the New Testament, there's a number of times where Jesus uses the words, I am. And then he describes himself. I am. He gives a name for himself. I am. And every time Jesus was doing that, he was referring back into the Old Testament, into the Old Testament book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 14, where God gave himself his own name for the first time. And so our memory verse for this series, Hi, My Name is found in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. And I'd love for you to read this out loud and hear God's words coming out of your mouth. It says, God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. Now, this word I am is the Hebrew word Yahweh, except when it was written, there were no vowels, so it was just Yah. Try that with me. Say Yah. And it means I create, I cause to exist, I am who I am, you don't name me, you don't define me. God is saying everything that you see that is greater than you, everything that is worthy of worship, everything that has power and authority, he says, I am. I am who I am. And this is what you're to say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. Now, the good news about that is God was speaking to his servant Moses, and he was sending Moses back to the Israelite people who were enslaved in Egypt to deliver them from this Egyptian captivity and slavery to set them free, to make them a people for himself. And so what he tells Moses is the message I have for you is I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. And so this is what we know about God. Our God, the I am, the creator, the one who gives life, the one who spoke everything into existence, he is always sending us to other people to declare the Lord's freedom. Isn't that good news? I love that about him. He's always sending us to other people to declare the Lord's freedom. And so when Jesus in the New Testament was using these I am statements, he was revealing himself as being God, but then also the nature of God. And one of these statements that Jesus makes is he says, I am the resurrection and the life. I am the resurrection and the life. Say that with me. I am the resurrection and the life. Well, that's a bold statement. We're going to dig into that. It's in John chapter 11. And as we do that, one of the things I would like for us to understand is that Jesus is not overwhelmed by death. So generally speaking, death can be a really overwhelming thing. I know in the video game construct, you might be thinking, well, that's not that big a deal. But I don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you were really about to pass a level in a video game and you're finally going to break through and then you die. Death is pretty overwhelming. You can get angry, you can get mad, you can throw a controller, you can get upset. Death can be pretty overwhelming. But then if you translate that into the life that we're living, death is always really overwhelming. Because the reality is when it comes to our physical deaths, we don't know what to do with death. We don't know how to handle it. And so death is overwhelming for us. It's overwhelming for a lot of reasons. I think first and foremost is that death comes with fear. There is a fear of death that we experience. And some people are like, oh, I'm not afraid of death. I'm with Jesus. I got the Lord with me. I'm not afraid of death. I would say, I don't know about that. Somebody asked me recently if I was afraid of death, afraid of dying. And I go, oh, sure. And they're like, what? But your hope's in Jesus. I'm like, oh, yeah, I trust him. But it's just a practical reality here. There is a bit of an unknown here. I don't know what that is. So generally speaking, there is a fear of the unknown. There's also this survival instinct that our Creator put into us to kind of keep us alive, hopefully from doing dumb things like walking off cliffs and stuff like that, He puts this inside of us to help us be safe and be like, okay, I didn't want to do that. And so there is this instinct. There's also this fear of the unknown and this kind of fight to stay alive. A fight to stay alive that's within us. And so death can be really overwhelming because whenever we're confronted with death, the death of a loved one or a friend or a natural disaster or something occurs and death is in front of us, we don't know what to do with that because it is a reminder that death is something that happens to everyone. And if you start thinking about that, it can get pretty overwhelming. Like right now, you're like, this is getting a little overwhelming. But I have good news for you. Jesus is not overwhelmed by death. He's not overwhelmed by it at all. In fact, when we think of death as being like the worst that could happen, and have you ever done, what's the worst happen? Well, I guess we could die. Oh, that's the worst that could happen. It is going to happen. And yet, when we trust Jesus with this and we trust him with our lives and our deaths, then there is a life to come. And he's not overwhelmed by this. And so there's this really great story in John chapter 11. We're actually going to read through the whole story through the course of this message, the entire chapter of John 11, and it's just fantastic. And so it begins in verse 1. It says, "Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. This is the Mary whose brother Lazarus now sick. She was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, 'Lord, the one you love is sick.' When he heard this, Jesus said, 'This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it.' Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And so when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, 'Let us go back to Judea.' 'But Rabbi,' they said, 'a short while ago, the Jews tried to stone you there, and yet you're going to go back?' And Jesus answered, 'Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light.' After he said this, he went on to tell them, 'Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to go there and wake him up.' And his disciples said, 'But Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better.' And Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, 'Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I was not there so that you may believe, but let us go to him.' Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, 'Let us go that we may die with him.'" Now, there's some interesting things in the first part of this story that I would just like for us to unpack a little bit. Jesus isn't overwhelmed by death, but here he is being confronted with it. His friends are being confronted with it. The disciples are being confronted with it. His good friends Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus. Lazarus, of course, is certainly being confronted with it because he's dead, like dead. We'll get to that. I mean, he's 4 days in the tomb dead. Okay, and Jesus gets word that Lazarus is sick, and it says there, he loved Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus, so he stayed where he was for 2 more days, which I just think is an interesting thing. Usually, he loved them, so he ran, he took off. He said, "We must not delay, let's go," because Lazarus is sick and he might die, and I don't know what to do with death, and so we got to get there as fast as we can and be frantic and do everything we can. And Jesus is like, "Nah, we're good. Lazarus is sick. Oh yeah, I love them. They're so great. Let's hang out for 2 days." And then he says to them, "All right, now let's go. Let's go back there." And the disciples are like, "Excuse us, Jesus, on the topic of death. Just a short while ago, the leaders there in that area were trying to stone you to death." That's where they would pick up rocks and throw them at them. And one of the chief reasons they were always trying to stone Jesus to death is Jesus was making this claim to be God in flesh, which was blasphemy. And so this was the charge they had against him. These "I am" statements were part of that. And so they're like, "They're trying to kill you there, Jesus." And Jesus is like, "Yeah, I know." But remember, Jesus isn't overwhelmed by death. He's not afraid of this. The disciples, though, are like you and me. The disciples are like, "No, this is scary, dude. I don't want to, if you go there, they're going to try to kill you. They might also try to kill us. This doesn't seem like a very wise thing." And Jesus says, "Okay, but Lazarus is sleeping." This is how he's telling them. He's like, "Lazarus is sleeping, so I'm going to go wake him up." And the disciples are like, "Oh, Jesus, yeah, don't do that. If he sleeps, he'll get better. Let him rest. We don't really need to go, okay? Let him sleep. He'll get better." And Jesus is like, "Oh, no, I'm not referring to natural sleep. Listen, I'll tell you plainly. Lazarus is dead. Like dead. I mean, he is dead." And Jesus is like, "And I'm glad we weren't there, for your sake, so that you can see and believe. And so let us go to him." And then you get this guy, Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus. That word means twin. It means he probably had a twin. But Thomas is the one that we're often referred to as Doubting Thomas. You've ever heard of Doubting Thomas before? He's the one that had some questions. He said, unless I see the nail marks with my own eyes and touch them, I won't believe that Jesus has resurrected. Well, here we are in John 11, and Jesus is like, hey, let's go back where they're trying to kill me, and let's raise Lazarus from the dead. And the other guys are like, I don't know. Thomas is the one that's sitting here going, all right, look, I'm going, we're all going. If he's going, we're going, and we can die with him. Which is an interesting statement, because we could read it like Thomas was like, oh boy. And he said to the rest of them, let us go also so that we can die with him. That's one way of reading it. Or maybe it was, guys, if Jesus is going, we're all going. Okay? And if he's going to die, we're going to die with him, because this guy isn't overwhelmed by death. And wherever he was exactly in that moment, I'm not sure, but it is kind of interesting how we can feel both things at different times. And that's because death, when it's close, is overwhelming to us. But remember, it's not overwhelming to Jesus. He knows how to handle death. Now, the reason it's not overwhelming to Jesus is because Jesus is the resurrection and the life. This is who he is. And so he's going to make that I am statement. I am the resurrection and the life. So if we think about something being dead, I mean, okay, it's dead. Jesus has authority to raise it to life again, to give it new life. Well, then this takes off a lot of the pressure. Takes off a lot of the pressure of living, that here he can raise it back to life. But he is also the life. He's the source of life. And so we pick up the story of the very next verse 17. It says, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. Therefore, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world. Okay, I mean, this is getting good. So Jesus shows up. Lazarus has been dead in the tomb for 4 days, which means he's like officially dead. Just so you know, like there's no question here about his death. They didn't make some mistake. He's been sealed up in a tomb with grave clothes on, rotting flesh, 4 days dead. Jesus shows up. Martha comes out to meet him. Her sister Mary stays back. And Martha does what we do a lot of times, particularly when it comes to death or really any difficulty that we're facing. She looks at Jesus and said, Lord, you're late. You ever done this one with him? I appreciate your presence now, but you're late. She says to him, Jesus, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. But I know now, even now, that the Father will give you whatever you ask of him. I know that he will do this. And so as Jesus is having this conversation, Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. And she says, yeah, I know at the last day, at the resurrection, at the last day. And Jesus' response to that is, I am the resurrection. And what that means is like the resurrection was right then. And this is something to understand. Because a lot of times when it comes to this relationship with Jesus and having a relationship with Jesus, it's basically about death and not life for us. So I've seen this kind of represented a lot of times. It's like, oh, so are you a follower of Jesus? Oh, yeah, I'm a Christian. Yeah, okay, tell me about that. Like what's the best part about being a Christian? Oh, yeah, I mean, like, when I die, I get to go to heaven. I'm like, oh, okay, so tell me more about that. Yeah, I don't know, but I got that going for me. I'm like, yeah, you may have missed it a little. He says, I am the resurrection and the life. See, that's what Martha was trying to do with Jesus right there. Like, oh, yeah. I know down the road, a long time for, on the last day at the resurrection, then sure, then we'll have a hope. But right now our hope is dead. And Jesus is like, oh, no, I am the resurrection And I am the life. He is not dead, and death does not overwhelm him. And he is here, and in the midst of all the death we encounter, the physical death, the death of family, the death of friends, the death in the world around us, the death of dreams, the death of relationships, the death that we encounter, the death of sin that we don't know how to deal with, the death that brings the separation from God, who is life, because we are imperfect because of the things we've done, all the death that's been put on us by the things other people have done, and we're carrying it around with these big old heavy loads that we don't know how to handle. All this death, he's like, oh no, listen, I am the resurrection and the life. And we don't have a hope that comes after a physical death. We have a hope right now because he is the resurrection and the life. And this is where it gets really good. And he says to her, do you believe? And I love her answer. Her answer is so great. She's like, oh, I believe. I believe you are the Messiah. I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. She says, I believe. I wonder, do you believe that Jesus is the resurrection and the life? Do you believe it? Say, I believe. I believe. Just try, I believe. I believe. Say, Jesus, you are the resurrection and the life. Jesus, you are the resurrection and life. And so when it comes to understanding who Jesus is and who he's revealing himself to be in this I am statement, Jesus is the life creator. He is the one who spoke it all into existence. God spoke and it was. At the beginning of the Gospel of John, where we're reading this story, the very first words of that gospel are, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and by him and through him and for him, all things were made. And then the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. This is our Jesus. He is the creator. So the one who had authority to speak and to say, into the darkness, let there be light, and there was light, that is Jesus. This is what he's saying in that I am statement. I am the resurrection and the life. He says, let there be light, and there was light. Let there be life, and there is life. But he's also the life recreator. This is where it gets even better. So yeah, he created life, but he's also the life recreator. He's the resurrection. He has authority with his own life, not only to lay it down, but to take it back up again, which he does. This whole deal with Lazarus, which we haven't gotten to the best part yet. We're getting a little precursor. Lazarus comes back to life. This is all like a precursor to what Jesus is going to do on the cross. I mean, this is exactly what he came to do, was to bring life where there was death. He is the life recreator. And so God is for you, not against you, where we get this mindset that says God's so upset with us and he's abandoned us and he's left us and he's angry at us because of the things we've done or the things that have been done to us. I will tell you, no matter who you are or what you've done or what has been done to you, Jesus can handle it and take it. In fact, he wants it, and he is a life recreator, breathing life where there has been death. And this life is for you. He's the life recreator. He's the resurrection. But then he's also the life sustainer. All right, so here's the deal. A lot of times people realize, oh yeah, wait, there is a God. Sure. Something, spoke all this or made this, or there has to be a creator. There's evidence. There's something greater than me out there. So yeah, there's that. And okay, yeah, he's the life recreator. Yeah, he rose from the dead. I believe that. But do you believe that he's also the life sustainer? That this isn't about just like dying and going to heaven. I mean, like he says, I am. Like we're not waiting around for that. It's now. Eternal life, if you have eternal life in Jesus, if you have received this resurrection in him of new life, then that eternal life is now. That's why the worst thing I can imagine and why I think so many Christians are so miserable is they're seriously just waiting around to die. They're like, nothing gets good until we die. And he's already handled that. And Jesus is like, what are you guys doing? Not only am I the life giver, the life creator, and the life raiser, and the life recreator, but I'm the life sustainer so that we have life in him now. And Jesus said he came that we may have life and have it to the full, to have it abundantly. Not just any kind of life, but an abundant life. And so I love this about Martha. Jesus asks her, do you believe? She's like, yeah, I believe. Now, is it possible, though, to believe something and then act in a different way? Is this possible? We all done this before? Is it possible? Because sometimes people are like, nope, that's not possible. Your actions show what you believe. I'm not buying it. I think sometimes we believe something and we act differently. I have a few examples. Number one, I personally believe that everyone should obey the traffic laws and that police officers are there to enforce those laws. But I still drive exactly 9 miles per hour over the posted speed limit with the firm conviction that it would be wrong for a cop to give me a ticket. I believe one thing and I act differently. I believe that if I eat right and work out, I will feel better physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But I'll still lay on my couch binging Netflix and pounding a bag of Cheetos instead of going to the gym because I'm already depressed. I believe that I am just a recreational golfer, not a professional who never practices and has never had a lesson. But I walk to the first tee every time I play expecting to break the course record. And then I get mad at every bad shot and say things like, well, I never slice the ball. I believe that animals do not have the ability to speak to humans. But I still have full conversations with our golden retriever Griswold. And his signature on my birthday card means more than all the others. I believe that Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in the history of football. But I still call him an idiot when he starts Mac Jones over Bailey Zappi. We can believe and know and then act in a different way. But regardless of our belief, here's the thing about Jesus. Jesus still beats death. He still wins. See, it's not dependent on our ability to believe. This is who he is, the life giver, the creator, the life recreator, and the life sustainer, and Jesus beats death. Let's get to the best part of the story. The next verse 28, it says, after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and he's asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Again, you're late, Jesus. And when Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him? But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of a blind man have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, remember Martha, the one who said, I believe you are the Messiah, the one who has come from God? But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he's been in there 4 days. I mean, okay, I just want you to understand what's happening here. Like, this is what Jesus came to do, to bring life to the dead. Like, this is like the most exciting thing in Jesus' time on earth is now culminating right at this point when his friend Lazarus is dead in a tomb for 4 days, and his sisters are weeping, and Jesus is there, and he sees all the other people are weeping, and he's deeply moved because he empathizes with us and how we are overwhelmed by death, even though he's not. And so he weeps, and he's like, all right, let's do this. And he says, roll away the stone. She believes when it comes time to roll away the stone. It's like, oh, Lord, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. I mean, just like Martha's like, you're late. Mary's like, you're late. Some of the other people are like, couldn't the guy who made the blind see, couldn't he have kept this man from dying? Everybody's telling him he's doing it wrong. And now he's like, okay, I'm going to do this. Roll away the stone. No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, Jesus. See, we believe, but then we act differently sometimes. See, that's the thing. Jesus is the life giver and the life re-giver and the life sustainer, and he has life for you. But wherever there's death in us, that rotting, decaying death that is weighing us down and holding us in darkness, and he says, let's roll away the stone. And we're in there going, it stinks in here. Run away, Jesus. You don't want to do that. He's like, no, let's bring it out into the open. Let's bring it out. Let's get the death out. Those things that you got buried down deep inside of you, those things you've done, those deep, dark secrets, the things that you don't know how to deal with, that you've been covering up and pressing down and holding back. Jesus is like, no, let's get them out. Let's bring them to light. You don't have to live in shame anymore. You don't have to live in guilt anymore. You don't have to live in fear of being found out anymore. He's like, I already know, so let's roll away the stone. And all that stuff that's happened to you, the wounds and the pain and the heartache and the hurt and the time after time when people have let you down and wounded you again and again, and they're buried down and they're with you. He's like, hey, let's roll away the stone. Let's call them out. Not just when you die, but like now he's the resurrection and the life. Roll away the stone, but Martha said, he's been in there 4 days. It stinks. And Jesus said in verse 40, then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, he called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around them. Take off the grave clothes and let him go, Jesus said. Take them off. Man, you may be all wrapped up in death. Grief, shame, mourning, guilt, sin, all wrapped up in death. But the resurrection and the life is here right now. He's here right now with you. He's here right now with you. Come out. That tomb is not your home. Come out. He will take the grave clothes off, take off all that death and decay, and he will do away with it and then let you go. Now, here's the cool thing about Lazarus. We don't know exactly where he went, but I know where he didn't go. He didn't go back in the tomb because that's not his home. Jesus came that we may have life, and he has life for you. Don't exchange one death for another death. Instead, the resurrection and the life is for you, and he has life for you. And you can step out and let him do his work. One of the great things that we can do is to confess, to just lay it all bare before him. Sometimes it's the things we've done. Sometimes it's the stuff that's happened to us. Sometimes it's how we feel about the stuff that's happened to us. We're angry. Lord, you were late. Where were you on that one? Feel let down. You can confess all these things to him and know that he will take them, because this is the very thing he came to do. When we share in a time of communion together, it is a way of remembering exactly how much God loves us. And if you have bread and juice, you can participate that way, but even without the bread and juice, you can still remember that Jesus took bread and he broke it and he said, this is my body, which is given for you. Jesus would lay down his life and receive all our death inside of him, being crucified, dead and buried, and on the third day rising again. He is the one that has taken death for us because he's not overwhelmed by death. And so if you're saying yes to Jesus, let's eat together. And he also took a cup. And he said this cup is a reminder of a new promise, a new life that we have in him. That he's not just the resurrection, but he is also the life. that he was raised on the third day, but now as he is the life, he is our life, he's your life, and he's Lord. But not just any Lord, the Lord of lords and the King of kings. And so when we drink this cup, we drink to the King. I'd love to invite you to be still and quiet before God. And take some time and confess. You can confess who he is. You are the King. You are my Lord. You are the Messiah. Yes, I believe you can confess the things you've done. Well, let's spend this time right now with him in prayer.
I just want to speak the name of Jesus over every heart and every mind. 'Cause I know there's peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. I just want to speak the name of Jesus. Till every dark addiction starts to break. Declaring there is hope and there is freedom. I speak Jesus. 'Cause your name is power. Your name is healing. Your name is life. Break every stronghold. Shine through the shadows. Burn like a fire.
Well, I just want to speak the name of Jesus over fear and all anxiety. To every soul held captive by depression, I speak Jesus. 'Cause your name is power. Your name is healing. Your name is life. Break every stronghold. Shine through the shadows. Burn like a fire. Let's sing that again. Your name is power. 'Cause your name is power. Your name is healing. Your name is life. Yes, it is. We'll break every stronghold. Shine through the shadows. Burn like a fire. We'll shout Jesus from the mountains, and Jesus in the streets, Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. Oh, come on, let's shout Jesus. Oh, shout Jesus from the mountain. Oh, Jesus in the street. Jesus in the darkness over every enemy. Jesus for my family, I speak the holy name, Jesus. Oh, your name is power, Jesus. Your name is power. Your name is healing. Your I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus. Ooh, we shout your name, Jesus. From the mountains we will say Jesus. Name above all names.
Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the bread of life. Jesus is everything that we need. He is the way to the Father. What good news we heard today. Our YouTube channel is helping us reach the most people in the shortest time. Thank you so much for subscribing. Make sure that you like and turn that notifications bell on to stay caught up with everything we have going on here at One Church. Here are a few ways that you can give. Thank you so much for your continued generosity. Your giving changes lives. I'm so glad that you joined us today. If this was your first time, thank you for sticking around. We hope to see you back here real soon. Continue to pray for one person to share God's love with every day. And from all of us here at One Church, have a good one.